All right, we're back for practice number 10 for the Colorado Buffaloes fall camp out here on the practice field. Nobody's here, so we're allowed to come out here, Adam, and be inside the gates. But, Coach McIntyre today kind of went over the scrimmage again. I know, obviously, fans saw the video of McIntyre talking after the scrimmage, but we always like to get his perspective after he watches film and things like that, and just kind of talk about what McIntyre talked about after watching the film.
Well, one thing he said is that some of those deep plays would have been sacks if it was a real game and the quarterback was live. There was one instance where Nate Landman would have absolutely destroyed Steven Montez, but because he's not going to get hit, he's not going to be as worried. So I think that was maybe made the offense look a touch better than they otherwise would have. So McIntyre likes their pass rush a little bit more than you're going to see in a setting like that.
So trying to temper some of those concerns about the defense a little bit. The other part of it is, and I think we all wrote about it the other day, was the defense was missing a lot of key guys as well. So, Mustafa Johnson, Chris Malumba up front, Rick Amboa didn't play a lot. Evan didn't play at all. Chris Miller really didn't play at all. But the concern there is kind of the thing we've talked about all summer, which is depth.
Yeah, I know you get asked by fans all the time, I do as well, what's going to be Colorado's record this year? They want to be able to set their expectations. Well, How do you do that when you look at their defense, and if Evan Worthington stays healthy, Nick Fisher stays healthy, those guys up front, Mustafa Johnson, Chris Malumba, like you mentioned, just missed the scrimmage. If their linebackers stay healthy, that's a pretty formidable defense that can do some really good things. But guys are going to get banged up, and we saw, I think that's one of the takeaways from Saturday as well, is when some of those guys get hurt, that defense doesn't look as good in quite a hurry. So I think that's the toughest thing in terms of gauging where this football team is at in terms of a potential win-loss record.
So let me ask you this as a follow-up. Of all the areas on the field on defense, what area do you feel like that they're the thinnest? I mean, what area would concern you the most if they have some injuries? Well,
you like that Aaron Maddox, who we talked about last week, is coming on a little bit, but you've got to look at Evan Worthington, who had a concussion last week, had a concussion in the spring, and so I think you got to be really cautious with him going forward. Nick Fisher, a safety in a cornerback's body, so that's where I would look the most. And then nose tackle Javier Edwards, you have Lyle Tuiloma there, but you don't have a lot of space eaters on that defensive line.
Yeah, I mean, you got some guys that can play the nose like Jace Frankie, but he's a smaller nose tackle. So I agree with you. I'd start with safety and then probably a defensive line. Because linebacker, I feel pretty good about it. And we'll see defensively. I love the look of those three guys, Landman, Lewis, and Gamboa, on the field at once. I'm eager to see how that looks. But I don't think the defense – I'm not as concerned about the defense as maybe it looked on Saturday. But there were some concerning things that we saw with injuries and things like that.
Yeah, and that's something that's going to affect the football team this year. But another big piece of news that came out late last night, Clyde Moore has decided to leave the program. Was a top 100 California recruit, loved his film. He just was almost maybe too relentless. His high school coach said that they couldn't let him hit in practice, that he was that physical. McIntyre said that he had some personal issues. At least his dad came out and sat down and talked with Mike McIntyre. At least it wasn't Sebastian Olver leaving after his first practice without telling the coaches. So that's unfortunate. I think you'll love some of the underclassmen at inside linebacker, Keel Jones, John Van Diest, Nate Landman, obviously. You've even got Jake Juracek, a walk-on from Texas that looks pretty good. But I think that becomes now a little bit bigger recruiting need for them this recruiting cycle. And while they have 17 verbal commitments, they don't have an inside linebacker committed yet.
And McIntyre did not completely rule out Clyde coming back at some point. So we'll see. I would say probably not, but he didn't rule it out. Another thing today, I was able to chat with Jake Moretti, who the fans always ask us about. I'm sure you get asked about it about as much as I do, but had a chance to talk to him and kind of talk about his injury. And we know he's been up and down, things like that. And that's what he talked about with me. It was just from day to day, just some days it feels good, some days it doesn't. But he did say he's felt really good throughout most of camp, and that for the most part, he's felt pretty good. And this is the best he's felt over a long period of time in 2 years since he got the original injury. So that's positive news.
Well, I think for a long time people just said, well, why is it taking so long to get back from the torn ACL? Well, the torn ACL is repaired and it's fine. He had great squat numbers. It's a nerve damage issue in his leg, which is hard to predict a timetable for that. And McIntyre said that it just keeps coming back slowly. I've heard sometimes it will hit a point where it starts to fire again. But again, you don't know exactly when that's going to happen. It's got to be a weird feeling not to have all the sensation in your foot and try to go out and play productive football.
Right, and Jake told me that his injury is very similar to the one that Jalen Smith suffered when he was at Notre Dame, now with the Dallas Cowboys, and it's taken him a while to get back as well. So it could be a while, but McIntyre did say Moretti's going to play this year. We just don't know how much.
Yeah, and you like the versatility and experience with Josh Kaiser. If they could do somewhat similar to what they did with Aaron Hagler and Sam Kronsage in 2016. That might be kind of a situation.
Right.
But yeah, I don't. As good as Jake Moretti is, I don't know if you'd feel comfortable with him being out there full time because you don't want to have any setbacks there, obviously.
Yeah, I think you want to get something out of him, but certainly not push him. But we'll see with that Jake Moretti situation. It's kind of ongoing, but we'll monitor it as we go throughout camp. So that'll do it for us today. We'll be back tomorrow to talk about practice 11.